Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Afraid? But I'm only trying to help you. Why should I be afraid? Because I want to see you die. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. This week we are doing another movie review. This is Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, from the legendary Hammer Films. Released in 1972 and directed by Seth Holt. Starring the lovely, the beautiful Valerie Leon in dual roles. Playing Margaret Fuchs and also Queen Terra as well. The ancient evil queen of Egypt. So yeah, this is a really super fun film, you know. And this was the last film in the Hammer Mummy franchise, and it's my favorite, definitely next to the original Hammer Mummy film, of course, starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. And interesting fact, Peter Cushing was supposed to be in this movie, and he did show up and did the first day's shooting and everything, but his wife apparently caught really ill, you know, terminally ill, so he had to leave the production, and Andrew Keir took over in the role of Professor Fuchs. And he does a great job, you know. He has Hammer credibility, of course, being in Quatermass in the Pit, very popular Hammer film back in the day. And this film is based on the Bram Stoker novel, Jewel of the Seven Stars. And that comes to play when we see, you know, the seven stars align kind of at the beginning, which is weird. You see a Hammer Mummy film taking place in space there at the beginning. You're like, what is this? Is this a mummy movie or like Star Wars or something? But that's where that comes into play with the seven stars aligning, and then, you know, thousands of years later, you know, that's when the stars align. That's when Queen Terra is, I guess, supposed to come back to life, you know. So yeah, that's the basic gist of it. So at the beginning we see this cabal of priests gathered around Queen Terra's body. And apparently they had drugged her, so she's in a comatose state, so she can't move or do anything. And they basically chop off her hand, you know. And they feed it to the dogs. And you can see on her hand, it's got this beautiful jewel on it, you know. And that's where we see the image inside the jewel of the seven stars. And that kind of gives her her power, you know. So what happens is the dogs get sick, you know, when they try to eat the hand. And you see the hand, like, crawl away out into the desert and still got the jewel on it. And that kind of, like, releases like a curse on the priests, and they all die. They get their throats ripped out, you know. Once they, like, encase the tomb and leave Queen Terra there to die, you know, they pay the price. And, of course, you know, 1,000 years later, or however long it is, you know, we meet Professor Fuchs, Julian Fuchs, played by Andrew Keir. And they, him and a group of, I guess, archaeologists get together and they stumble upon the tomb of Queen Terra, who is, of course, played by Valerie Leon. She's got this beautiful headdress, you know, you get, like, the epic underboob there. Beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous woman. And the funny thing is, when they open the casting, she's just perfectly preserved and beautiful, you know. She's not, like, decaying corpse or anything, you know. She's like perfectly preserved, and it's kind of funny. It's like, wow, how'd that happen? They didn't have to wrap her up in bandages to preserve her or anything. But yeah, I always thought that's kind of funny. So what they do when they find her body, they take the ring, that was on her hand, and they take a lot of the relics from the tomb, and he brings them to his house and basically sets up the whole tomb in his basement there, with her casket, her body, and everything, all the relics. Like one of them's the scroll of life, one of them's like this cobra statue, one of them is this like big, like black cat statue. So yeah, and then we meet his daughter, Margaret Fuchs, again played by Valerie Leon. Bears striking resemblance to Queen Terra, doesn't she? And Daddy loves his daughter, and he gives her the ring worn by Queen Terra with the jewel of the 7 stars. And that kind of puts her in like a trance-like state. And, it's basically like Queen Terra is reincarnated through her. And she starts acting kind of like wild and crazy, And people start dying around her because of the power of the ring. She, shows it to this guy, and he freaks out, and he dies, and his throat gets ripped out, and she's basically, almost a slasher villain. She goes around killing people, with the power from the ring, the jewel of the 7 stars. And you see her, she's becoming Queen Terra, she's, almost like remembering things. We see throughout the film she has these nightmares, of what went on there in the ancient Egypt times, And it's really interesting. So she basically, as the film goes on, becomes Queen Terra, reincarnated. Another interesting fact is when Margaret was born, her mother died, and she died giving birth, and the baby died. So the baby died and actually came back to life. So it's like, wait a minute, is she literally Queen Terra reincarnated, or is just the power wearing the ring giving her the power and the, is she being possessed by Queen Terra, or is she actually Queen Terra reincarnated? So that's kind of the interesting scenario of it, it keeps you guessing that way, and that's really cool. That makes it really interesting, I think, It's just a fantastic film. It's so much fun, and Valerie Leon just commands the screen. Of course, we saw her in The Spy Who Loved Me, so how cool is that? We see Valerie Leon and Carolyn Monroe from Spy Who Loved Me did these big Hammer films, so this is just a great showcase for Valerie Leon, because the movie basically centers around her. And what happens is she meets this guy, Corbeck, who is one of the, archaeologists, along with Professor Julian Fuchs, that went to the tomb of Queen Terra. And his plan is to gather up all the ancient relics that some of the other archaeologists took, like the cobra statue and the and the cat statue and the scroll of life. And the plan is to gather up all those relics, and that will help awaken the sarcophagus of Queen Terra, and Queen Terra will be reborn when the 7 stars unite. And when he reads from the scroll of life the ancient words, that's supposed to resurrect her in the end, So that's the plan, and that's what they do. They basically gather up all the relics, and they kill off all these other people who were the father's colleagues. One by one, almost like a slasher movie, she kills them off, with the ring and her powers and her seductive powers as well, almost like hypnotize them, not only with her beauty, but her, but with her evil powers. So yeah, this movie is so much fun. I highly recommend it. one of the last great Hammer films, you know. Because as we know, they kind of went downhill, you know, when you get into the later 70s, you know, when they kind of fizzled out. But this one I highly recommend. It's my favorite in the Hammer Mummy franchise, outside the original Mummy, of course, which is the best. I mean, this is one of the greatest Hammer movies of all time. You're not going to beat that. But I like that they tried something different, making a female, you know, not being like the hulking zombie monster, you know, bandaged up. But we do get to see her bandaged up there at the end, you know. It's kind of fun. Kind of a fun nod to the previous entries in the franchise, as well as, of course, the Universal monster films as well, you know. Lots of nods to that. So yeah, definitely check out Blood from the Mummy's Tomb from Hammer Films, released in 1972, starring the lovely, the beautiful Valerie Leon, as well as Andrew Keir, James Villiers, and Hugh Burden. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared. Folks, don't forget to grab your Sean Patrick Erschen gear and represent the Horror Corner. Also, check out these awesome mugs we have, perfect for your coffee. And definitely check out the Horror Hangout live stream t-shirt and represent the legacy of the Horror Hangout. Check out the link in the description below this video.